everybody to this webinar in which we are going to discuss the advances and also the problems that Latin American feminist movement is facing today. And this is organized, of course, around the 8th of March. So first I'm going to speak in English. I'm going to give a translation afterwards in Spanish. My name is Edna Dominguez, and I'm the president of GADIP, the organization behind this webinar, which is Gender and Development in Practice in Sweden. We are such an association organizing events like this one, conference, etc. And our main purpose is to have a collaboration between activists and academics. And this webinar is precisely such an example. And not only GADIP is organizing this, but also the University of Gothenburg behind in this, that is part of this organization. And we are very happy to have so many people that register for this webinar. So now I'm going to start introducing our panelists, especially the first two ones which are going to start this webinar. But first I'm going to do this presentation in English, in Spanish. Muy buenas tardes y muy bienvenidos a este webinar que estamos organizando por parte de GADIP, Gender and Development in Practice, que es una asociación feminista que trata de establecer una colaboración entre académicas y activistas. Y aquí en Suecia y trabajando temas de género y cuestiones internacionales. Esta vez vamos a hablar sobre el feminismo en América Latina, los avances y los retrocesos o los retos que enfrenta. Y para ello tenemos a 4 panelistas invitadas hoy. Y antes de pasar a la presentación de estas panelistas y a sus presentaciones individuales, me gustaría decir también que este webinar también tiene como coorganizador a la Universidad de Gotemburgo y a nuestra red europea, la red a la que pertenece GADIP, que es White Plus. Y ABF, que es una de las organizaciones que apoya estos eventos por parte de GADIP. Y ahora pasaré a la presentación de nuestras panelistas. Vamos a empezar con Maria Eugenia Romero. Y Maria Eugenia Romero va a presentar la situación de México. Maria Eugenia es directora general de Equidad de Género y es miembro de la Red Sexual de Derechos Sexuales y Reproductivos en México. También miembro de una asociación civil, consejera sobre en el foro de la generación Igualdad. También representante de ECLAC en las conferencias sobre mujeres, población y desarrollo y miembro del grupo de asesoría de Naciones Unidas, entre otras organizaciones. Pero ella también va a hablar más sobre su propio papel. So Maria Eugenia Romero is our first panelist, and she's the General Director of Gender Equity, Citizenship, Work and Family, which is a member of the network in Sexual and Reproductive Rights in Mexico, a member of the Civil Society Advisory Group of the Forum Generation Equality, and a ECLAC representative in the Regional Conference for Women, Population and Development. She's also a member of the Advisory Group of the UN Women, among other organizations. And in this case, she is going to speak directly in English. I forgot to say that this webinar is being sent live in our Facebook, GADIP's Facebook, and it's being recorded just in case if you want to see it again or to give the link to somebody else. Thank you. Welcome, Maria Eugenia.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here with all of you and to have the opportunity to share some information about Mexico with you. I'm going to share my screen so that we can see well. Okay. Oh, no. Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. Did it wrong. Just hold on a second. Okay. So, well, we can say that there have been a lot of changes in Mexico in the recent years. The feminist movements have achieved several things because we have been working very, very hard as we have done for many years, but the circumstances in Mexico have changed a lot, and this has allowed us to get some achievements. Although these achievements are not homogeneous in the country and they do not reach nor benefit all of the women in the country with 126 million population and with a very large territory. But these achievements are the basis for multiple other changes. I must also say that there are very strong conservative forces in the country that are permanently trying to fight back or hamper the recognition of more women's rights to equality. But let's talk about political participation of women. This is like for the first time in the year 2015, we have reached a law about political participation of women, and this gave us the opportunity to have parity in Congress in the year 2018. So we can see that we had almost 50% of women and men in the House of Representatives and almost, 50% of women and men in the Senate. This is a very, very important issue because all these women work together also to develop other laws that have to do with other powers, like the judiciary power, for example. Now with ministers are like vacancies are open, like women are the ones who have the right to start to apply for those positions. They go first. And also at the municipality level, like it is also encouraged that women take more positions. And so this is like, this has changed very much, like the image of the country. Also with this government, with López Obrador in power, he started in 2018. He has there are 19 ministries in the country, and 9 of them are headed by women. Like one, and some more important, well, some of them are very important. For example, the Ministry of the Interior, which is like the second most important position in the country after the president, is led by a woman, Olga Sanchez Cordero, who's very like, he is a feminist, let's say, and she's using like developing policies to like advance women's rights in the country. We also have several feminist women in the Senate, like they have been feminist activists, like we have there Patricia Mercado, Citlali Hernandez is like, she's like 27 years old, but she's like so powerful with so many ideas, and she's very strong. And then we also have Wendy Briceño, which is also like the head of the Commission of Gender Equality in the House of Representatives. So these are like very important women in power now. And on the other side, we have also Nadine Gassman. She is also a feminist, and she is the head of the National Institute for Women. Now, well, when women are empowered, also the political violence has increased, because it's like all these resistance and barriers and men that feel that They are the owners of the political powers and all that. So like attacks to women are like an everyday issue all the time, and there's some laws that have been passed against it, but it's very, very difficult to control that. On the other hand, we can say that even though these women are in power, not all of them have the real power. That is something that we still have to reach, because like they are not always supported by their peers, they are not always supported by the president, they are not always supported by the women or the men in power. And we also need to work a lot more on gender mainstreaming within the institutions. This is not a reality yet. It's like people talk about gender, but it's not really a reality in the same institutions. So we can say also that we do not have the support of the president. I mean, when talking about violence against women, he has said he has neglected violence against women many times. I don't know if you know, but he gives a press conference every single morning for about 1.5 hours or 2 hours from Monday to Friday. And he's asked about like different issues, and some of them have been like violence against women. And he said, no, during the pandemic, no, that hasn't happened. No, it's women. Families are very nice. They take care of themselves. That's not an issue, more or less. So that doesn't really help our agenda. But as I said, we have to work with what we have around us. So we work with the other women who are in power, and we try to collaborate with them so that they have more power. And then we have this very recent case of a candidate for governor in the state of Guerrero, who was accused of raping 5 women in the last 10 years, something like that. He's been accused several times, but the president, for example, says that this is a political issue and that he neglects the situation. And he says that the people of the state of Guerrero are the ones that must decide if they want him as a governor or not. So he is running for governor, although he is been accused of rape several times. On the topic of abortion, we have, as in Latin America, thanks to the Argentinian women, we have this green tide that started there, and several young women in Mexico, many young women in Mexico have taken this issue and have been fighting for the decriminalization of abortion, whether it be social or legal. Let's say abortion is legal in Mexico under different circumstances, but this depends on each state of Mexico, although rape is an issue for which abortion is decriminalized all throughout the country. So we worked also on the decriminalization of abortion in Oaxaca, that was in 2019. And there are several initiatives in the different local congresses, because each state of Mexico has a different law. It's not like the federal law that would apply for everybody. Federal laws only apply, like in the case of abortion, for federal public health institutions, okay? Still, we also would like to see some decriminalization in the federal penal code, and that would help also. But there have been several initiatives in the different congresses, and the women's organizations have taken these places, and they have blocked the entrance, and they have lived there for several weeks and all that to make the legislators to decriminalize abortion. This happened recently, for example, in Quintana Roo state, and unfortunately, we didn't get the law passed because there were 13 votes against and 7 for the initiative. But still, Puebla is another state where this issue is happening, And we see these movements all over the place. And also, as at the federal level, as I said, well, there have been some initiatives also, but I don't think there is real political will from the party Morena. Morena is a party that has like the majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and well, there's no political will, I would say, and they have not really passed the law we have been working on, and there are many initiatives and nothing has happened. But it's important to say that this issue, the issue of abortion, we have been working for 20 years in the issue of abortion under the National Alliance for the Right to Decide, and we decriminalized abortion in 2007 in Mexico City. And at that time, in 2020, abortion was never talked about. It was never a public issue. Now it is. It is an everyday issue, and we will see it during the elections that are going to take place this year, very much. Then also, anti-rights groups are really strong, as I said before, and they are trying to pass several laws, and they disguise some restrictive laws with the so-called protective issues, like the parental pin. This parental pin means that parents have to give consent on sexuality education, and this affects the right of the child to be educated, and it's against the Constitution. But many parents believe this really protects their children from becoming lesbian, gay, or transgender if they are not exposed to sexuality education. Or this is the way they phrase it and they put it, okay? And there are several initiatives also in the country and several laws at the constitutional level in the states that protect life from conception. And with this, they try to prohibit abortion, but this, in fact, does not really affect the situations in which women can have access to abortion in different states, but it creates confusion among the providers and the legislators and also the judicial system. We have this norm, this is the 046 norm, that is the health system norm that says that abortion can be provided in case of rape in any circumstances in the country, and even girls who are 12 can ask for abortion without any consent from their parents. So we're working hard at that, and this is an important norm that affects all the country, and also the person who is in charge of this institution that is the National Center for Gender Equity and Reproductive Health. She is very positive about providing abortion in case of rape, and she's working very hard on this. Also, with we can say that these anti-rights people have a lot of money, they are well-funded, and they work very hard. So they mobilize people, they pay the people to go to demonstrations. And as we saw recently in Quintana Roo State, the bishops also call legislators and they threaten them and they press them and they pressure them and everything so that they do not vote for an abortion law. Well, the feminist movements in Latin America, they have been they have more power, more presence, and in Mexico that is not different. That we have had young women all over the place, like they have these clotheslines to denounce cases of rape at the universities. These are like ropes with papers hanging where they accuse their professors or directors and everything of harassment or rape and everything. And some of the professors have been dismissed because of this. And they are very vocal now. They are having strikes in universities. They have seized, as I said, the Congress, the universities, the rights commissions, and several other buildings. Well, I'm running out of time, I think. But I want to say that there is also this initiative that was passed recently. We're going to have the largest elections in Mexico City in the history of Mexico. I mean, not Mexico City, in Mexico, the largest. It's like 15 states are having elections for governor, and that's half the country. And then for municipalities and local congresses and all that. And then we have this initiative that was approved by the National Electoral Institute that says that candidates cannot be like, men cannot be candidates if they are accused of domestic violence, sexual crimes, and etc., etc. We have also passed laws that prohibit dissemination of images of victims of deadly violence, like femicides. And we also have the Olympia law that started a young woman whose pictures, whose nudes were viral. And then we have this law in different states of the country. And well, during the COVID pandemic, as well, the inequalities were shown clearly, right? Like access to health, access to services, like the participation of women in domestic care work, and the lack of participation of men in domestic care work, and the lack of internet access, and like many things were like became more evident and in Mexico. Violence rates increased. Like we attended 383 cases of violence against women, and we accompanied 1,491 women who were seeking for abortion. These are rates that are like very high, different from other years. And the shelters, the national network, also they reported that all the cases increased, violence increased. We are at the point where we are celebrating this, the 25 years of the fourth conference on women, and Mexico is one of the leaders in this process. So we have, the government has included the civil society organizations. I'm a member of the group, the advisory group, and they want to take the feminist agenda. They want the feminists all over the world to participate very, importantly, in a very important role in this gender equality forum that is going to take place in March, from March 29th to 31st. So I invite everybody to go to the Gender Equality Forum website to register and to participate there. And well, the agenda in this forum, we are like putting in the center like the eradication of violence and gender inequalities, which are like really affecting, and we have not done, or the governments have not done enough in the recent years. So the idea of this forum is like to find better ways to work together, to make commitments, to make more efforts, and put more money, and to put more people together and stakeholders to finally reduce inequalities. Well, sexual and reproductive health and rights are an important issue here. We also have to, well, we have the chance to reinforce here an economy, the economic autonomy, the national care systems, and so many other things that are on the agenda. Well, women in Mexico, as in many countries in Latin America and many other countries in the world, we're working very hard and harder all the time for rights and to make a world better, because we believe that building a better world is just an equal world is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Eugenia, for this presentation. It sounds very, very interesting. And we will come back to many of the things that you have presented. Now, muchas gracias, Maria Eugenia, por esta presentación, y creemos que vamos a regresar después para preguntas y comentarios sobre lo que has dicho. Y ahora vamos a pasar a la presentación de Graciela Di Marco, de Argentina. Y antes de pasar a esto, voy a presentarla, primero en español, después en inglés. Graciela Di Marco, nos conocemos ya hace mucho, es precisamente lo que decíamos en Gadir, esta combinación de académica y activista. Ella está doctorada por la Universidad de Buenos Aires, tiene un grado honoris causa en la Universidad de Misiones, Argentina, y es profesora de la Universidad Nacional de San Martín. Y ella ha trabajado mucho en cuestiones de género a nivel de investigación, de enseñanza, y claro, de militancia en todos estos temas de género, ciudadanía, política social, feminismo, etc. Y yo creo que las académicas conocemos mucho a Graciela por precisamente sus aportes académicos y su concepto del pueblo feminista y seguramente de lo que va a hablar ahora. And I'm going to present her in English. Graciela Di Marco has a doctorate degree from the University of Buenos Aires, and she's a professor of the National University of San Martín. And she has been a very active researcher and teacher regarding gender issues, but she has also a militancy in the field of democratization, gender, citizenship, and other areas. So we are very happy to have Graciela here. So please, Graciela. And I'm going to make the translation because Graciela is going to speak in Spanish, but her PowerPoint is going to be in English. Por favor, Graciela. Tienes tu micrófono.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias por la presentación, Edmé. Es un gusto estar con ustedes y recordar cuestiones que tienen que ver, no sé, me pregunta si deseo activar mi micrófono. Ya está activado, ¿me escuchan, no?
Sí.
Es un gusto estar acá con ustedes y compartiendo este espacio con las colegas. Le quiero agradecer especialmente a Edmé, por supuesto, a Magda, a la que he estado consultando y molestando todos estos días, a Gadis, la organización que siempre me llamó la atención cuando se la escuchaba hablar a Edmé hace más de 20 años, me parece, o alrededor de 20 años, y por supuesto a la Universidad de Gotemburgo. Yo elegí un starting point que tiene que ver con pensar desde el punto de vista de Argentina, del contexto de Argentina, no desconocer las cuestiones que todavía nos faltan, pero sí parar un segundo para compartir con ustedes la alegría de lo que hemos logrado.
Puedo interrumpirte, para traducir. Graciela is very happy to be here, and she thanks the organizers, and she is going to make her presentation, as said, in Spanish, and her PowerPoint is in English, and she's also very happy to start with what feminists in Argentina have achieved, for example, this legalization of abortion.
En la marcha del 8 de marzo de 2017 me llamó la atención este cartel que portaba una mujer que estaba marchando. Y decía, prostitutes like Eva Perón, insane like the mothers, referring to the mothers of Plaza de Mayo, and bitches like Cristina, referring to Cristina Kirchner, the former president, and the present vice president of Argentina. And these are some kind of models we have about going in our kind of feminism. I want to go with another, ahí está. Los feminismos están en la vanguardia de las luchas democráticas en muchos países. Obviamente que en cada uno de ellos tienen peculiaridades que dependen de su propia historia y de su contexto. También las mujeres estamos en la vanguardia en la presente crisis producida por el COVID-19, y también las mujeres y niños sufren más que todos el impacto de esta crisis. No voy a poder referirme a cada una de estas cuestiones, pero quiero mostrar estas luces y sombras, estas cosas positivas y estas negativas, aunque sea enunciándolas. Pero a pesar de las preocupaciones por la pandemia, me refiero a que había que estar encerrado y todavía ahora, etcétera, etcétera, las estrategias feministas continuaron en todo el mundo en el 2020, en algunos países más que en otros, de una manera muy creativa para mantener los derechos logrados, reclamar más derechos y demandar y denunciar por la violencia, la explotación y la crisis de cuidados.
So you can see what she has said in her former slide as about feminists in the forefront of democratic struggles, also women in the forefront of this pandemic, and the feminist struggles have continued in spite of everything in a very creative way regarding these rights and claims. Okay.
Thank you. El propósito de esta presentación es analizar los procesos seguidos por los feminismos en América Latina, las demandas y las articulaciones que surgieron, que abrieron las condiciones de posibilidad de un impulso histórico en el que estos se encuentran en el centro del escenario político. En Argentina, por lo menos de palabra y para afuera públicamente, está muy claro que es necesario tener en cuenta en todo momento no solamente a las mujeres, sino también mujeres autoidentificadas como lesbianas, trans identificados como mujeres, o sea, hay una creciente toma de conciencia y está muy mal visto. Aclaro públicamente, esto no sé lo que pasa en los ámbitos privados, no creo que mucha gente cambie de golpe, criticar o discriminar a estas identidades.
Perdón, Graciela, ¿puedes poner la anterior? Porque la anterior es lo que acabas de decir.
Pero es que yo no la puedo mover. Acá está. No, lo agregué yo eso. No está. No.
Bueno, ok.
Podemos avanzar.
Sí.
A mí me gustaría poder manejar yo el PowerPoint, no sé si se puede, no. Bueno, ¿avanzamos entonces? Bueno, esa es una foto de una de las tantas marchas con el pañuelo verde en una de las ciudades, puede ser Buenos Aires, pero también puede ser cualquier otra ciudad de la Argentina.
So this is the photograph of one of these marches with this scarf, the green scarf, which it's precisely for the legalization of abortion.
Quiero aclarar que mi objetivo de investigación, eso no está ahí me parece, pero lo voy a decir igual, mi objetivo de investigación de hace mucho tiempo busca la existencia o no de articulaciones de identidades que encarnarían la construcción de contrahegemonías a partir de las demandas en torno a la expansión de derechos, lo que permite vincular la lucha de las feministas con otras luchas, y esto es la fuerza de la articulación contrahegemónica. Yo tomo especialmente en cuenta para esta presentación el periodo inaugurado en el nuevo milenio en varios países de América Latina, con foco en la Argentina. En Argentina, el movimiento feminista...
Perdón, como no está ahí, Graciela is having as a goal in her research the articulation of identities to form this counter-hegemonic force, which has to be there in the expansion of rights. It's much more complicated. I try to make a resume of these ideas. Okay?
Okay. El movimiento feminista siempre planteó la lucha por el derecho al aborto en la arena pública. No desestimó otras estrategias, pero la lucha más clara y desde siempre fue la lucha en la arena pública. Esto no fue siempre tan sencillo, y hubo un momento en el cual esa lucha que convocaba a feministas, pero no más que feministas, se amplió. Se amplió esa arena pública a más actores y actrices. Esto es lo que voy a hablar ahora. La legalización del aborto recién entró en el Congreso en 2018, ahí fue rechazada y logró pasar en diciembre del año pasado.
So there has been, feminists have driven a very extensive struggle in the public arena, and the struggle has also entangled several actors. And recently this has focused on abortion, the legalization of abortion, which entered into the Congress already 2 years ago, but was rejected. It's only very recently that it was accepted. Adelante.
Adelante, ok. La confrontación con la posición de conservadora representada por la Iglesia Católica y Evangelista en materias de derechos de las mujeres, lesbianas y trans ha sido muy, muy fuerte en Argentina, porque si bien tenemos una constitución laica, no es tan laico como quisiéramos realmente, y esto ha influido por algo que no puedo comentar acá, la conformación del catolicismo en Argentina, tiñó toda la vida política del país y toda la sociedad, posiblemente por herencia de nuestros inmigrantes, abuelos inmigrantes italianos y españoles, por cómo se conformó políticamente la mayor fuerza en Argentina, que es el peronismo. El asunto que el integrismo católico tuvo, mejor dicho, una fuerza que no la tuvo ningún otro país latinoamericano.
Okay. So Graciela is speaking about the enormous force strength of the opposition of the Catholic Church and some evangelist churches, and the fact that she calls the integrismo católico, the Catholic integrist, which is more stronger enemies to this kind of feminist struggles. It has been extremely strong in Argentina, much more than in other countries of Latin America. And this,
La buena noticia es que en diciembre, que estaba muy dividida lo que era el discurso feminista y el discurso antigénero, finalmente la ley de aborto, que es lo más contrahegemónico de la lucha feminista, pasó al Congreso.
And the good news is that in spite of all the divisions that they have before, this and the anti-gender discourses, the whole demand of legalization of abortion went to the Congress and was approved in December.
La legalización del aborto se marcó en un marco, perdón la repetición, de derechos, de discurso de derechos humanos, de la sexualidad como un asunto político, de la ciudadanía sexual para mujeres lesbianas y trans, también como sucedió con la ley del matrimonio igualitario y la ley de identidad de género.
So the whole discourse around the legalization of abortion, it was put into the frame of human rights and citizenship and political rights for other sexuality, transsexuality, and the kind of marriages of the same sex. All this was part of this framework of political rights and citizenship. Yes.
Podemos pasar, si querés, Magda, la demanda por el aborto ha tenido un punto, es un punto nodal que ahora voy a referirme, porque justamente no es una demanda que comenzó ahora. Si tomamos nada más que el comienzo del siglo, podríamos decir que pasaron 15 años, pero fue desde principios de la democracia, desde 1983, que se instaló con mucha fuerza la demanda por la legalización del aborto. Y eso es producto, o sea, el que llegara al Congreso es producto de una movilización continua feminista, usando todos los medios que se podían usar para llegar, pero también con lo que sucedió con la crisis del 2001 y la implosión del sistema político argentino, que permitió que surgieran movimientos sociales y que surgieran otras identidades con las cuales el movimiento feminista se pudo articular.
So this struggle around abortion has started a long time ago, 38 years ago, and which is the same time as the democratization process, which started in '83. And also this struggle has been articulated with other social movements, other social demands that have advanced it. And it has been discussed in the Congress already and submitted 8 times.
Los encuentros nacionales de mujeres han sido fundamentales para esto. Nosotras nos reunimos una vez al año, desde 1986. Son encuentros que se organizan por cuenta de los movimientos feministas, son autónomos, aunque siempre los partidos políticos tratan de estar cerca para ver qué pasa en esos encuentros y qué ventajas pueden obtener, por supuesto. Esto es propio de lo que sucede en la política y en los movimientos. Pero ha sido como el corazón de la articulación y de la expansión feminista, han sido los encuentros. Ahí, en mi libro yo destaco lo que se fue logrando en cada uno de los encuentros, algo que no voy a hacer acá.
Graciela speaks about the importance of these encuentros nacionales, which are national forums of feminists and women movements that has been the axis around which the whole movement has shaped itself. They are forums organized every year at the national level by the civil society, by women and feminist organizations, and they are unique articulation points that have driven forward this struggle. So, and this is quite unique for Argentina. And they started already in '86.
Desde 2018, por todos los cambios culturales que han sucedido en Argentina, los encuentros ya no son de mujeres y nacionales, ahora son encuentros plurinacionales de mujeres lesbianas, trans, travestis y no binarias. Y una militante dijo, el feminismo ya no es blanco y europeo, los feminismos son villeros, indígenas, comunitarios, trans y travestis, son afros, son del pueblo.
So these encuentros have also transformed themselves, and they are no longer only encuentros of feminists and women, but since 2080s, they are instead women, lesbian, transvestites, trans, bisexuals, non-binary, and very plurinational. So they're called plurinational encounters of women, lesbian, transvestite, and non-binaries. And they are no longer considered to be only white European, but they have opened to all these different identities.
Ahora estoy en condiciones de decir que la constitución del pueblo feminista tiene lugar justamente confrontando con el discurso antigénero, el discurso conservador de la Iglesia Católica y su aliada evangélica, y articulando con otros movimientos sociales. El centro del pueblo feminista, como una entidad contrahegemónica, está dado por los feminismos, pero también hay vertientes que vienen desde otras fuentes que se unen en o sea que el pueblo feminista es más que una sola versión de los feminismos.
So the concept Graciela is using is the people, the feminist people. And these feminist people is not only an assembly of different feminists, it has been articulated in this struggle, as well as the fact that they have had to confront the Catholic Church. And this has shaped the emergence of these new feminist identities, feminist movements, radicalization, which has been happening in the late years.
Este pueblo feminista es una articulación contrahegemónica que incluye todo tipo de identidades y demandas. Podemos pasar, si querés, Magda. El pueblo feminista es ampliado constantemente porque no es algo cerrado, no es un club, no es un partido político, obviamente, es un movimiento. De tal modo, voy a sintetizar para cumplir con el tiempo, de tal modo que es una articulación política como resultado de luchas por la consolidación de una democracia pluralista, cuando esto se amplía, cuando aparece el movimiento Ni Una Menos, porque el movimiento Ni Una Menos al principio era un movimiento solamente centrado en denunciar la violencia contra las mujeres, pero hubo la posibilidad, sobre todo por la militancia de las jóvenes, para que se convirtiera también en un lugar de resonancia de las demandas feministas. Y el pueblo feminista ampliado con las nuevas actoras, especialmente las jóvenes, que llegaron en los últimos años, toda esa ampliación, esa movilización, es lo que pudo ser el sustrato para que pudiera llegar la lucha por el aborto, llegar al Congreso.
So, Graciela is speaking about this concept of feminist people that is a result of this broadening of this pluralist democracy in which feminist movements have achieved. And it will be broadened by the movement against violence, Ni Una Menos, not one less. And also it has been enriched by the militancy of young people, young women that have come to this moment in the late years. And that is the base of this enormous force that has permitted the legalization of abortion.
Ellas se identificaron con el pañuelo verde, que viene de cuando muchas de esas jóvenes ni siquiera habían nacido. Es muy tierno ver esto, que tomaron el pañuelo verde, que había surgido hace muchos más años de los que ellas tenían. Muchas todavía no habían nacido en ese momento. Y el pañuelo significó un factor de reconocimiento, nosotras frente a los otros que no quieren respetar nuestros derechos. Esto es lo que constituye un pueblo, la distinción, la frontera antagónica entre nosotros y los otros. Y esto fue posible justamente porque encontramos una fuerza impresionante en unas nuevas feministas que son las mujeres y muchas veces también sus compañeros o no de otras diversidades sexuales y varones que acompañaron la lucha feminista.
So we have that they identify themselves with this green scarf, which is quite old. It's much older than the age of many of them. They were not born when this scarf started to be used politically and has now signified this identity of these feminist people against the others. And this has been strengthened by this force of young women, but also men, and all kinds of sexual identities that have gone into these feminist people.
Para terminar, lo que quiero marcar es que de una manera u otra la rebelión feminista viene siendo planetaria. Estas movilizaciones de mujeres y de otros colectivos subalternos. Por ejemplo, la huelga de mujeres en Polonia en 2016 sirvió de ejemplo para la huelga que el movimiento del Ni Una Menos hizo en la Argentina, a un año de haber surgido el movimiento del Ni Una Menos. También cómo se realizó la lucha de las mujeres polacas fue analizado e interpretado por una colega sueca, Jenny Gunnarsson Apaine, que se pregunta, ¿pueden las mujeres ser el pueblo? Y concluye su análisis con la expresión, las mujeres como el pueblo, con un análisis similar al que yo ya había hecho unos años atrás. Sin conocernos, sin haber tenido ningún contacto, las dos, usando la misma teoría, habíamos llegado a la misma conclusión.
So, this movement is not only Latin American, it's global, from the whole world. And one example is the strike in Poland that was carried out in 2016. That was an example also for the Argentinian feminist movement in order to have also their own strike. And that takes also to the idea developed by a Swedish feminist regarding if postulating the question, can women be the people? And so these feminists from Sweden came to the same conclusion as Graciela, reading the same theory, came to the same conclusion regarding the feminist people.
Y como último, otro ejemplo, cuando el expresidente Donald Trump asumió la presidencia, al día siguiente una gran manifestación de mujeres y colectivos LGBTIQ en ese país y en todo el mundo. Y unos reporteros de un periódico canadiense pusieron como título She the People, ella el pueblo. También con esta concepción de pueblo que es como fuerza contrahegemónica. Y con esto quiero terminar y agradecer especialmente a la gentileza y la traducción tan accurate que hizo Edmé y a Magda por haber pasado el PowerPoint. Les agradezco mucho.
Gracias. So the last example put forward by Graciela was Trump. When he was declared president, there was this enormous demonstration in the United States. And not only in the United States, but elsewhere. And so a journalist put this as an example of saying, she the people. that is also part of this idea regarding the feminist movement. Okay, thank you very much, Graciela. And now we go to the other panelists, and now it's going to be Magda who is going to present them. Thank you. Magda?
Hello, everybody. I'm going to present Professora Cristina first in Portuguese and then in English. Professora Cristina is from the Federal University of Santa Catarina. She is a PhD in social history by the University of São Paulo, USP. And she is a full professor at the history department in the University of Santa Catarina. She's also a writer and an editor, and have been involved in many in writing and editing many books. And she's also especially an editor of the magazine called Estudos Feministas, Feminist Studies magazine. She is a research and is also an activist in gender issues, feminist theory, social movements, women's history, and one of the focus of her research have been the dictatorship, especially dictatorship in Brazil. Professora Cristina é professora da Universidade de Santa Catarina. Ela tem PhD dela em História, agora me corrija, é História Social, que se fala em português? História Social, né? Que ela recebeu através da USP. Ela dá aulas, né, na Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina. Ela também é uma escritora, é uma editora, trabalha principalmente na edição da revista Estudos Feministas. Também é uma pesquisadora e ativista, e tem o foco do trabalho dela, tanto como professora quanto pesquisadora e também como ativista, as questões de gênero, né, a teoria feminista, movimentos sociais, né, das mulheres, história, né, dos movimentos sociais das mulheres, e principalmente tendo como pano de fundo me esqueci agora da palavra em português, ditadura no Brasil. Desculpa, gente, faz um tempo que eu não falo português. A ditadura no Brasil. Bem-vinda, professora, a palavra é sua.
Muito obrigada. Eu vou falar em português e logo em inglês. So, thank you. I will speak in Portuguese and in English. Eu quero agradecer a oportunidade de estar aqui junto com pessoas tão queridas, tão importantes, né, como a Graciela Di Marco, a Maria Eugênia, a Morgani, a Edmê, a Magda, e todas e todos que estão nos assistindo. So I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here in this company with my colleagues that I know about, that we normally we meet in LASA, but this years it was not possible. Normalmente a gente se encontra na LASA, mas não foi possível. Eu sou historiadora e por isso eu vou começar contando um pouco de história. O Brasil viveu uma ditadura entre 1964 e 1985, justamente nos anos em que o feminismo estava explodindo no mundo ocidental. Mesmo com a ditadura, a partir da década de 1970, com alguma ajuda também do Ano Internacional da Mulher, que foi estabelecido pela ONU em 1975, começam a se organizar movimentos de mulheres, muitos deles se auto-intitulavam feministas. So I am an historian, so I will start by telling you a little bit of history. Brazil experienced a dictatorship between 1964 and 1985. And this is very important to say because, you know, in Brazil nowadays, some people say that there was not a dictatorship. É muito importante a gente dizer que teve ditadura, porque atualmente muitas pessoas negam a ditadura, a existência da ditadura no Brasil. So these years in the 60s and 70s were the years when feminism was exploding in the Western world. But even with the dictatorship from the 70s, we have, and with some help of the International Year of Women that was established in 1975 by the UN, women's movements began calling themselves feminists. A nossa pesquisa, depois eu vou colocar ali o site, que se chamou Mulheres de Luta, que acabamos de publicar um livro e um web documentário, está acessível a todos, acesso livre, mostra que outros grupos de mulheres também já estavam ativos na luta por direitos nas décadas de 70 e 1980. Mulheres camponesas, mulheres negras, mulheres das periferias, mulheres indígenas, sindicalistas, organizando e participando de encontros, publicando jornais e atuando politicamente. Nem todas elas se diziam feministas. Eu convido todas, né, para acessarem o webdoc e que brevemente a gente vai ter legendas em espanhol e em inglês. So, our research that was published in the book and the web documentary, Mulheres de Luta, Women of Struggle, shows that other groups of women were also active in the struggle for rights in the 70s and 80s, peasant women, Black women, women from the peripheries, from the, you know, the
marginalized women, socially marginalized women.
Yes, and indigenous women, union members, organizing and participating in meetings, publishing newspapers, acting politically. And I invite everyone to access the webdoc, which will also have subtitles in Spanish and English soon, very soon. Os anos 80, o final dos anos 80, com a abertura política, também foi um período de muitas conquistas consolidadas na Constituição de 1988. So, in the late 80s, with the political opening, and the end of the dictatorships, was a period of conquest, so consolidated in the 1988 Constitution. Ainda é vigente, né, essa Constituição. It's the same Constitution we have today. In the 90s, os anos 90 foram interpretados como anos de uma institucionalização e onguinização, né, do feminismo. Mas é preciso destacar que esses movimentos de mulheres, aqueles que nem sempre utilizaram a palavra feminismo, que lutavam por direitos fundamentais, continuaram a existir nos 90 e se fortalecer também. So in the 90s, they were interpreted as years of institutionalization of the feminism and also NGOization. I don't know what's the name for this, but a series of NGOs. But it should be noted that those women's movements that did not always use the word feminism, but that fought for fundamental rights, continued to exist and organize and be strong themselves. Então, de 2003 a 2016, o Brasil foi governado pelo PT, o Partido dos Trabalhadores. Também foi um momento em que várias leis e políticas públicas foram colocadas em prática, com limites e negociações, mas também com muitos avanços. So, between 2003 and 2016, Brazil was governed by PT, Workers' Party. It was also a time when several laws and public policies were put in place with many limits and negotiations, but many advances as well. Depois, a partir da eleição da Dilma Rousseff, que foi a primeira presidenta mulher do Brasil, em 2012, ela começou o mandato em 2012, começou já a articular-se um golpe de Estado que somente foi vitorioso no segundo mandato dela, em 2016. O golpe utilizou todos os meios possíveis, como o lawfare, que, aliás, esse lawfare foi comprovado ontem por uma decisão do nosso Superior Tribunal Federal, que desqualificou o julgamento do presidente Lula, devolvendo a ele os seus direitos políticos. Contra Dilma foi mobilizado um discurso antifeminista, misógino, que se conjugou com o aumento paulatino da influência das igrejas evangélicas neopentecostais, com o discurso da ideologia de gênero, o racismo, o ressentimento das classes médias contra as políticas de cota e de regulamentação do trabalho doméstico, na construção de um conservadorismo neoliberal que foi encarnado pelo atual presidente de forma muito estereotipada. So, where I begin? After the election of Dilma Rousseff, who was the first president, women president of Brazil in 2012, however, a coup d'etat began to articulate, which was only victorious in her second term. The coup used all possible means, such as lawfare, which was confirmed yesterday by the decision of the Superior Federal Court that disqualified President Lula's trial, giving him back his political rights. Against Dilma, an anti-feminist and misogynist discourse was mobilized, which was combined with gradual increase in the influence of neopentecostal evangelical churches, with the discourse of gender ideology, racism, resentment of the middle classes against quota policies, and regulation of domestic work. In the construction of a neoliberal conservatism, which was incarnated by the current president in a very stereotyped way. Are you understanding? It's good in English? Okay. Bom, aí vem a pergunta. Isso significou um backlash? Né? Isso significou ir para trás? Sim, do ponto de vista das políticas públicas para as mulheres, da sua influência no governo, do seu acesso a políticas de renda mínima, casa própria, isso significou, sim, um backlash. o aumento da violência doméstica e dos feminicídios de 2018 em diante, depois da eleição desse senhor, que vocês sabem quem é, cuja primeira medida no governo foi liberalizar o uso de armas, foi exponencial. Só em 2018 aumentou 30% a taxa de violência contra mulheres no Brasil. O que somente se agravou agora ao longo da pandemia e da situação caótica em que o país está mergulhado desde o início de 2020. So I ask, did that mean a backlash? Yes, from the point of view of public policies for women, their influence in the government, their access to minimum income policies, their own homes, that really was a backlash. The increase in domestic violence and feminicides from 2018 onwards was exponential. After the election of this gentleman, who you know who he is, I don't want to say his name even. It was when he was elected. After he was elected, his first measure in the government was to liberalize the use of weapons. So we had 30% of increase in violence against women in the year of 2018. Bom, por outro lado, desde 2011, nós vivemos o que uma autora brasileira, Heloísa Buarque de Holanda, tem chamado de explosão feminista. E vejam que a data se conjuga exatamente com a eleição da Dilma Rousseff, né, 2011. Uma nova geração de mulheres começou a ocupar as ruas, reivindicando questões com outras formas de ocupar esse espaço, usando a internet para se organizar, colocando o corpo, fazendo performances. Foram as marchas das vadias e as marchas das camponesas, as marchas das mulheres indígenas, das mulheres negras. Mulheres da periferia vieram também em muitos lugares para as ruas. A chamada Primavera Feminista, em 2015, colocou em questão os direitos reprodutivos também. O movimento 8M, desde 2017, tem sido muito importante. O Ele Não, que foi um movimento enorme contra a eleição do Bolsonaro, foram muito fortes esses movimentos. Num momento nacional em que as esquerdas se encontram muito fragilizadas e não conseguem se unificar, parece que a única unidade possível é a das mulheres pela vida, pela vacina e contra Bolsonaro, que foi o lema, né, do 8 de março, do 8M ontem, né, que aconteceu ontem. So, in the other hand, since 2011, we have lived what Heloísa Buarque de Holanda has called the feminist explosion in Brazil. And I think so it's in Latin America also. And see that this date, 2011, matches with Dilma Rousseff election. A new generation of women began to occupy the streets, claiming new issues with other ways of occupying this space, using the internet to organize themselves, placing the body, making performances. It was the slut walks, the marches of the peasant women, indigenous women, Black women, women from women from the margins, we can say, also came to the streets a lot of times. The so-called Feminist Spring in 2015 put the question of reproductive rights too. Morgani will speak about abortion, so I will let for her. And the 8 May movement and Ele Não, that was against the actual president, were strong movements at a national moment. When the left is weakened and seems unable to unify, it seems that the only possible unity is that of Women for Life, for the vaccination, and against Bolsonaro. That this was the slogan from 8M that was yesterday. It was 8M that we were not in the streets, but we were all about internet. It was very important. Então, eu acho que não é só um movimento que leva para trás, é isso que eu quero dizer, não é só um backlash. Existe esse movimento para o conservadorismo, o antifeminismo, a misoginia, a homofobia, a transfobia. Ele se alia ao capitalismo mais neoliberal possível, esse da uberização, da negação de todos os direitos para as trabalhadoras e das políticas de inclusão e de renda mínima. Mas também, e também é um movimento mundial, né? Esse movimento da direita, do conservadorismo. Mas há também um movimento de resistência, de criatividade, de amizade feminista, de esperança. A pandemia tem trazido muitas perdas, pois as ruas, que sempre foram o lugar político da reivindicação, tornaram-se perigosas, as aglomerações são proibidas. Mas também há a repressão, que começa a se tornar importante, mais aparente no Brasil, né? Com a morte, com o assassinato de líderes, né? Como foi o caso da Marielle Franco, como são várias lideranças indígenas e camponesas que têm sido vitimadas pela violência, por uma violência teoricamente não oficial, ela não é legalizada, mas ela está ocorrendo e está vitimizando essas pessoas, né? Assim como também muitos meninos negros nas favelas. Mas a gente precisa acreditar que, eu vou fazer um jogo de palavras, eu não sei se em espanhol dá para entender, mas dias mulheres virão. Where I begin? Yeah, it's the last one. So I think it's not just a backlash, a movement that takes us back. There is this movement towards conservatism, anti-feminism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia. And it's a world thing, yes, a global thing, this movement for the right. But there is also a movement of resistance, of creativity, of feminist friendship, of hope. The pandemic has brought many losses because the streets, which have always been the political place for the claim, become dangerous, agglomerations are prohibited. And there is also repression. This government begins to make this repression that's not official, but it occurs with the militias, with unofficial repression. but that was the murder of leaders like Marielle Franco, like many indigenous leaders and peasant leaders, like so many Black boys from the favelas. But we have to believe that better days will come. I cannot make the same game with the words. In Portuguese, we say mulheres is very near mejores. Mulheres is like better, melhor, melhores. So that's it. That's what I have to say. And if you have any questions, I will be at your disposal. Se vocês tiverem questões, depois eu respondo.
The questions can be sent to our chat or our Q&A. So please write down what you want to ask for all our panelists there. As questões vão ser tratadas depois de todos falarem. Agora é a vez da Morgani. Então, escreva a sua pergunta, tanto no chat, principalmente no Q&A, ali do nosso webinar, que nós vamos... todas elas vão ter um tempo para responder as perguntas mais tarde, ok? Muito obrigada, professora Cristina. Agora eu quero apresentar a Morgani, que também vem da Universidade de Santa Catarina. A Morgani tem um PhD na área de Ciências Humanas, né, da Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina, e ela trabalha como pesquisadora no Laboratório de Gênero e... que é História de Gêneros ou História e Gêneros, Estudos de História e Gêneros.
Estudos de Gênero e História.
Ah, sim, tá, desculpa. Também lá na Universidade de Santa Catarina. Além disso, ela também é uma jornalista, né, ativa no portal chamado Portal Catarinas, né? Também uma feminista, ativista, que trabalha na frente pela descriminalização, meu Deus, e a legalização do aborto no Brasil, né? Ela, na pesquisa dela, ela foca geralmente nos movimentos femininos, né? Pelas lutas, né? Pelos direitos sexuais e reprodutivos, e tendo especialmente o direito, né, à descriminalização e legalização do aborto como a pedra principal da pesquisa dela. Tá? Agora eu vou falar em inglês. I would like to present Morgani. She is also from the Federal University of Santa Catarina. She is a PhD in human science from the university, and she works as a research in the laboratory of gender and history studies at the Federal University of Santa Catarina. She's also a journalist and writes for a magazine and site that is called Catarinas. And mostly of her work and her research are around the fight for the decriminalization and the legalization of abortion in Brazil, and also involve, of course, the research of movements, female movements for the fight for the sexual and reproductive rights. That's the still issue in Brazil. And the cornerstone of her research is the fight for abortion, the right for abortion in Brazil. So welcome, Morgani. Morgani is going to speak in Portuguese, and I'm going to translate in English. Welcome.
Thank you. Bom, boa tarde a todas, todes e todos. É um prazer estar aqui. Queria agradecer a oportunidade de participar desse diálogo com pesquisadoras que eu não conhecia pessoalmente ainda. Então, muito prazer. E eu vou pretender abordar aqui, então, algumas questões mais explícitas sobre esse backlash, digamos assim, do governo dos últimos anos no Brasil com relação aos direitos sexuais e reprodutivos das mulheres e das pessoas com útero no Brasil.
Okay. She's thanking everybody for the chance for being here. For her, it's an honor to be here and in the presence of so many research that she didn't meet personally, but she did know about. And she thanks for the opportunity, and she thinks that is very nice to be here. And what she would like to talk about is the backlash that the feminist movement in Brazil is experiencing relating to these rights for the reproductive rights and the sexual rights in Brazil.
Certo. Então, considerando essa contextualização histórica, né, do Brasil nos últimos anos, que a professora Cristina já fez, eu vou pular bastante coisa que eu ia falar, então isso é maravilhoso que já encurta bastante, né? O que é interessante de considerar aqui, que é a questão de como esse governo que está hoje no poder no Brasil, ele é uma confluência, digamos assim, de forças, tanto na área das forças militares, né, de alguma ala das forças militares, com um movimento conservador ligado às igrejas evangélicas, que elas têm ocupado ao longo dos últimos anos tanto as periferias no Brasil, né, na ausência, às vezes, dos próprios movimentos sociais, quanto a própria política partidária. Então, considerar esse contexto é importante para aquilo que eu vou trazer aqui, que tem a ver com esses retrocessos nos direitos sexuais e reprodutivos.
She would like to talk about this, but before she says that it's very important what Professor Cristina has said, because put us in this historic perspective about what happened in Brazil before and what is happening right now, especially during this the current government in Brazil that symbolize, that has synthesized a lot of forces, some conservadorism, extreme conservadorism, the right wings ideas and ideologies, and of course, most of all, also the Pentecostal churches and its very conservative ideas about, especially about this reproductive, and these churches have been a constant presence in Brazil, occupying sometimes and very often in the areas of marginalization in the society, Brazilian society. These churches have been replacing the absence of the social service. So with Bolsonaro and his government, these churches have been gain a spotlight in the political scenario. So it's very important to put that in place historically and politically to what she's going to present right now.
Certo. Então, uma coisa que eu vou trazer muito são as últimas, digamos, ações explícitas desse governo com relação à limitação dos já limitados, digamos assim, direitos sexuais e reprodutivos das mulheres e pessoas com útero no Brasil. Então, dentro de um contexto que a gente vem, né, de escola sem partido, ou aquilo que a Cristina mesmo já falou, da questão da ideologia de gênero, essa falácia que foi criada pela direita, né, ultraconservadora aqui, a gente também tem um contexto que é a pandemia do novo coronavírus, que, junto com a questão das mortes, né, e das pessoas doentes por causa do vírus, a gente também teve uma limitação do acesso às pessoas aos métodos contraceptivos, o acesso ao aborto previsto em lei no Brasil, que ele ocorre em 3 casos, né, risco de morte materna, quando o feto é anencéfalo, e também quando a mulher é engravidada em resultado de um estupro. Então, esses também foram alguns serviços que foram limitados no contexto da pandemia.
She's would like to talk about, to present these new policies that Bolsonaro and the government has presented, because with the entrance, he's taking the office, has immediately changed ARED, and not only change, but also make more difficult for women and everybody who has a womb in Brazil to get access to this ARED, very scarce public service when it's about the reproductive rights in Brazil. And this has been worsened during the pandemic. Now with the pandemic, women, even because of the situation of the lockdown in some cities, and the mobility has been, of course, now controlled by the pandemic, and or controlled now, maybe is the better word to be like worsened the pandemic, and also have make it difficult for these women, and everybody has a room to get access. And the laws that have been passed have even make it difficult for women who has suffered being sexually attacked, and as a result have become pregnant. So these laws make very difficult for them to have like the right for abortion. That was something that they were assisted in the Constitution, but right now, despite that is not something very, how to say, it's not legal, but the government is still fighting for taking away even these rights for the women that suffer rape.
Eu vou falar um pouco mais devagar, então. Além dessa questão da pandemia, né, e embora a Organização Mundial da Saúde tenha considerado, né, os serviços de atendimento a pessoas grávidas ou vítimas de violência sexual, ou seja, os serviços de obstetrícia e ginecologia como um serviço essencial, no Brasil nós tivemos o fechamento ou a limitação de torno de 50% dos hospitais que realizavam esse atendimento de vítimas de violência sexual para a realização do aborto previsto em lei, né, que são pessoas que foram engravidadas vítimas de estupro. Além disso, um dos serviços mais importantes do Brasil, ele fechou logo em março. Então, logo que iniciou a pandemia do ano passado, logo que iniciou a pandemia, esse que é um dos maiores serviços do Brasil, que fica em São Paulo, ele foi fechado. E só depois de muita mobilização das feministas, de organizações sociais, né, do Brasil, organizações da sociedade civil, alguns juízes entraram com um pedido, então esse hospital voltou a funcionar. Vou deixar.
Senão fica muito longo, daí fica difícil de me lembrar. With the pandemic, what happened was that, of course, with the unstraining of the health service, the government used as an excuse to actually close some centers that made this support for women that suffer any kind of sexual violence, especially the women that were raped. Especially in São Paulo has one of the, as I could understand, maybe a national authority in the care of the sexual assaulted women and raped women. And already in the beginning of the pandemic in last March last year, Bolsonaro gave an order to close this center. And after so many manifestations of different civil groups, civil society groups, and even with the intervention, judicial interventions, they got to judges to actually force the government to open up this. So it's it has worsened for all worsened all this care for these women, especially during now the pandemic. So what happened is that the number of these centers of care of the sexual assault of women had been closed by 50%. They came down to 50% of their capacity only to attend these women in the whole Brazil?
Bom, talvez seja uma questão até de tradução, mas só para deixar mais explícito, né, que, na verdade, esses serviços de atendimento a vítimas de violência sexual, eles estão regulamentados, eles funcionam, supostamente, né, eles estão cadastrados dentro do Ministério da Saúde, mas não necessariamente o governo fechou. São serviços que ficam fragilizados, né, por falta de verba, muitas vezes, pela questão do que eu vou falar a seguir, que vai ser digamos, essa perseguição aos profissionais de saúde que realizam o aborto previsto em lei no Brasil. Então, um dos casos que é bom chamar atenção foi, por exemplo, em junho, quando uma equipe de saúde publicou uma nota técnica dizendo que os serviços de aborto legal eram serviços essenciais, que os profissionais podiam fazer os atendimentos por telemedicina e que deveriam dispor de serviços de contracepção, principalmente a pílula do dia seguinte, o governo Bolsonaro, o que ele fez? Ele exonerou esses profissionais, que continuam sendo, mas eles não são mais parte dessa secretaria, né? Continuam sendo servidores públicos, porque não se pode demitir, mas eles saíram dessa pasta por ter publicado uma nota que era declaradamente favorável aos direitos das mulheres. Então, é dessa forma que é feito, digamos assim, a ação desse governo, né, para limitar os direitos das mulheres no Brasil. Não sei se tu precisa traduzir toda essa contextualização, mas só para deixar mais explícito.
I'm just going to make a correction that Morgani caught my attention, is that is not, these centers are not closed. They actually lost the money, the support. The government used, of course, the context of the pandemic to actually cut the support, the financial support for this place. And some days ago, what happened was one of these center had writing a note about how essential this service is, and also talked about some demands that they had, for example, to have the possibility of a platform that they could meet these women by videos to make possible to keep this support to them, and also the demand of the after day pill. I don't know if it's something that is known for you, but it's a pill that a woman can take the day after, within a number of hours after sexual intercourse, that actually stop the possibility of getting pregnant. So with this note that came out in an official, what we call the official diary, I can imagine that is a part of the newspaper where the government often write down everything that is happening in the country, that everything is official. With this note, these professionals of this center have been not fired, but they have been taken away from this service to make it more difficult for these people to actually do that, because the motto of the government is to actually go against abortion. And this note was actually very openly informing the women that they have the right and they could get support for getting an abortion in case of rape and sexual assault.
Então, vou tentar ser mais sucinta ainda na minha apresentação, dizendo que como que acontece, digamos assim, essa cruzada do governo, né, atual contra o direito das mulheres. Então, de uma forma, as manifestações internacionais do governo têm sido contrárias, né, por exemplo, a resoluções da Organização Mundial da Saúde ou a resoluções da ONU, por exemplo, que tentam prevenir, por exemplo, casamento infantil e forçado, tentam prevenir ou garantir o acesso a direitos sexuais e reprodutivos de mulheres e pessoas com útero em crises humanitárias. Então, esse governo ele se manifesta publicamente, internacionalmente, contrário a esses direitos, isso é uma coisa. né? A outra coisa é tentando influenciar em casos, por exemplo, um caso muito emblemático que aconteceu em agosto de 2020, que é o caso de uma menina de 10 anos que foi violentada desde os 6 anos por um tio, engravidou e não teve acesso ao aborto previsto em lei no seu estado. Foi só pelo movimento feminista ter ficado sabendo desse caso, né, que essa menina conseguiu acessar o aborto em outro estado, que foi acolhida pelo próprio movimento feminista. Então, a gente ficou sabendo depois, né, que a própria Damares Alves, que é a ministra da Mulher, da Família e dos Direitos Humanos, ela estava envolvida junto com as pessoas que tentavam, digamos, barrar esse direito para uma menina de 10 anos, que era uma menina que com certeza não teria nem condições físicas, né, de parir. Então, como que esse governo se articula, né, barrando esses serviços, tentando influenciar diretamente pelos próprios servidores, né, e também se manifestando publicamente contrário aos direitos, como acontece no caso das resoluções da ONU.
Morgani told how does this crossroad between like the right-wing government symbolized by Bolsonaro and the worsening of the rights to the reproductive, the access to the reproductive rights and sexual rights for women happen. Bolsonaro has often and over already affirmed many times in front, not just the public in Brazil, but internationally, his position against many institutions like the UN and the World Organization of Health. For example, when it's regarding the women's health and especially the sexual and reproductive rights. And one example, for example, that how he not only manifested, but he also acted on it was a case that happened last year in August when a 10 years old little girl, it became like very famous in Brazil, was known that she was pregnant and she has been abused since she was 6 by a family member, and she got pregnant and she tried to get an abortion in her state, and due to the acts of the government symbolized then by the Minister of Family, this girl she and her family has to move to another state to be able to interrupt this pregnancy that was clearly a risk for her. She's just 10 years old and she has been raped and she couldn't carry this pregnancy ahead, even for physical reasons.
Certo. Então, para fechar, só queria dizer, então, que obviamente existe um avanço, né, de tentativas desse governo e parlamentares ligados a eles para a interrupção ou diminuição dos direitos sexuais e reprodutivos das mulheres, né, pessoas com útero no Brasil. A quantidade de projetos de lei que tentam instaurar um estatuto do nascituro, por exemplo, aumentou muito nos últimos anos, e muitos desses projetos são projetos que vêm do próprio governo federal. Então, com certeza, o movimento feminista, nesse aspecto, ele é fundamental para barrar o avanço desses projetos de lei ou a aprovação desses projetos de lei. As feministas, articuladas com a bancada feminista e antirracista no Brasil, de deputadas, têm ficado muito atentas, feministas, né? Todas as pessoas têm ficado muito atentas a esses avanços nos projetos de retrocesso, na verdade, que parece contraditório falando assim, para tentar realmente chamar a opinião pública para realmente o problema que isso poderia gerar quando a gente pensa principalmente em crianças, porque nós sabemos que a questão do tabu com relação ao aborto está relacionada às mulheres, porque, né, tem toda uma questão conservadora em torno desse tema no Brasil. Porém, no último ano, né, nós ficamos muito felizes porque há uma esperança quando nós vemos, por exemplo, no 8M, né, no 8 de março, que foi ontem, a questão do aborto seguro ficar no mote principal dentro das manifestações. Então, quer dizer que as mulheres que antes não conseguiam falar sobre aborto ou não tinham, às vezes, essa coragem de colocar essa questão ainda em público, né? Esse ano a gente viu elas bancando, digamos assim, essa demanda, né, que é uma demanda histórica do movimento feminista, mas que ficava muito restrita, junto com um projeto de justiça reprodutiva, né, então que é muito mais amplo só do que a questão do aborto. Então, eu acho, falando isso para encerrar, assim, pensando numa questão um pouco mais otimista, talvez, otimista é difícil, mas assim, não só olhando para o lado negativo da coisa, e ver como essas articulações internacionais, principalmente latino-americanas, e principalmente depois do avanço na Argentina, elas têm proporcionado para nós brasileiras, dos movimentos feministas brasileiros, um pouquinho mais de coragem de sair às ruas demandando pelo aborto livre, né, pelo aborto seguro, e também por justiça reprodutiva. É isso.
Okay. So she's saying that there is a backlash, but there are also articulation among several civil society organizations, among Brazilian politics, and also some international organizations that give support, international organizations not only from other countries, but also in Latin America. This coordination among them are fighting and advance in this against this backlash that the movement, the feminist movement, most of all, and the civil society movements for the reproductive and sexual rights are facing. So, for example, one of the things that she mentioned as a sign of that is that for now, 8 March, yesterday in Brazil, one of the mainly subjects that was in the top of the trend of the 8 March celebration, or also the demands, was the abortion. And this is something very new in Brazil, because before, the women wouldn't have even the courage or the freedom actually to openly talk about that. And yesterday was one of the trend subjects in the top of the 8th March celebration. And another point is also what happened in Argentina. The same, the legalization and the discriminalization of the abortion there. Morgani sees as a strength, a point of strength to actually see this happening, maybe in Brazil. I believe that it was all. So thank you, Morgani. Thanks so much.
So, unfortunately, we have only 10 minutes left. I was hoping we could have more time for discussion and for questions and for comments, but we don't have so much time. Perhaps if somebody from the public wants to raise a question or a comment, and then we can go directly to the panelists. Is anybody in the public still here interested in raising a question?
There is a question actually for Professora Cristina in the Q&A. Laiane is asking, mesmo antes da volta das exiladas nos anos 70 no Brasil, o movimento de mulheres, mesmo não chamadas de feministas, lutava pela conquista democrática. Isso seria uma continuidade para as mulheres de hoje que lutam contra a repressão do governo Bolsonaro? Translate that is a question for Professor Cristina. From Laiane, and she's asking that even before the comeback of the women exilated in exilated during the dictator in Brazil in the 70s, the movement of women, even though they didn't call themselves feminists, they fight for the democracy. Would that be a continuity of work for the women today against the repression installed by Bolsonaro?
Sorry. So I answered it in Portuguese in the...
And it's better you answer in English directly, Cristina.
Yeah,
we have no time for
in
translation.
She speaks about exiliated because some people, some studies about feminism in Brazil said that the feminism came with the women that were in exile during the dictatorship, and when they come back in 1979, they would bring the feminism. But no, there was feminist ideas circulating in Brazil before the 70s, even in the 60s, and even before. But during the 1970 years, decade, there was a movement that was called Movimento Feminino pela Anistia, Feminine Movement for Amnesty, that was very important for the conquest of democracy in Brazil at this time, and for organizing women in various states and nationally in Brazil. And there was also popular movements, popular women movements, like against the prices that were increasing, or against or for kindergartens, or for other fundamental rights, and peasant women and Black women that mobilized at this time. So, and I think it's difficult to think about a continuity, a simple continuity, but perhaps we can speak about a certain way to organize that seems that women get to have in their movements that were different from other kind of movements that were very limited by parties or ideologies. And I don't know, in the case of women's movements, perhaps we have this possibility of a unity. That was what I think, but I really don't know about a continuity, because the women that there are now in the streets or in the internet making 8M, they are not the same as in the 70s or 60s.
Okay, we have only 5 minutes left, and some of us are having also internet problems. I suggest that those of you in the public, for example, Eva Sherval, who has questions, send these questions to us, and we will send it to the person who can answer them. Because unfortunately, as I said before, we have to close down in just 5 minutes. So I just want to take this occasion to thank all our panelists for having been able to come here, to spare some of your time to come here and share with us your experiences, your reflections, and I hope this starts a dialogue, and we will continue it somehow. I also want to thank Magda, of course, for having been one of the organizers and translators, and Regina for having helped us in these technical issues regarding the webinar. But as I said before, unfortunately, we have a time limit, and we have several panelists. We didn't want to exclude anybody, and we have the problem with translation, which takes a long time as well. So thank you again. And as I said before, If you have anything you want to put as a question, as a comment, we can facilitate the contact with the panelists. So in the name of the university and GADIP, I will close this webinar, and of course you can look at the recording from the homepage of GADIP. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon, all of you, in the public and the panelists in future webinars. Thank you.